And while God says we're supposed to forgive and love our enemies, I don't believe that that means we need to be in close proximity with every single person that we've forgiven.
Yeah, Christopher says, I know we are supposed to love our enemies, but how do we reconcile loving them when we don't want to have anything more to do with them? How do you handle that?
Wow, that's a tough question. I think one of the things that's important is there's all different kinds of reasons why a person might become a quote unquote an enemy. And it could be because they did something to harm or to hurt someone very specifically and intentionally. And while God says we're supposed to forgive and love our enemies, I don't believe that that means we need to be in close proximity with every single person that we've forgiven. And so I think, as we look very, very carefully at the relationships, we need to realize that when trust is broken, trust needs to be rebuilt over a long period of time. And I know that is your, Christopher, I believe you said it in your question, you may have referred to some scriptures that actually talk about how we're supposed to deal with those kind of people. And the reality is this: we're called first to forgive, and then we need to work out the relational framework from there as to how close we're supposed to be or not supposed to be. And so I really think it's important that we just keep our eyes focused on let's do the first part and allow God to give us wisdom and discernment in the rest of the relational framework. What do you think?
Yeah, no, well said. I think sometimes we just assume what love looks like too, and that we think it's always got to be those warm fuzzies. And sometimes the best way to love somebody is giving yourself distance in between them, and it's a healthier place for them and for you. So just because you're not in close proximity or the relationship doesn't look like what it did before doesn't mean you're not loving them well. It's just sometimes a difficult place to be, but sometimes the best place to be, and a place of growth and learning to love differently.
Yeah, absolutely. I think Jesus spent a lot of time with the Pharisees. I'm not sure he would consider them enemies. I think he considered them victims of the enemy because they got caught up in religious. But they would get caught up in a lot of religious legalism, but he would often invite them to walk with him, but they often didn't. And it's interesting that he never looped back around again to say, well, I'm going to just continue to try and work inside of this relationship. In fact, he just allowed them to make decisions. And then I think the relational framework got put around that relationship, and it became that Jesus always had the door open. The Pharisees didn't always choose to walk through it because God was very clear about what it meant to follow him. And I think that was brilliant on behalf of Jesus. So
Yeah, well, and I love that you brought up, Jesus' example. We always come back to Jesus. But Laurel, it reminded me of our conversation this morning. We were talking about how important it is to be modeled something. We act in the way that was modeled to us. And I think the reason we come back to Jesus and reading scripture is because we look to Jesus as the model for how to handle these kinds of things. Like, I don't think we know how to do them on our own, but Jesus modeled this. How do I respond to my enemies? How do I respond to people who literally maybe hate me or persecute me? I mean, Jesus was such a good example of this. And so I think that's the importance of going back to scripture, is because we get to see the way Jesus did it. And then we get to model our life off of that. Right. And I think that's a huge reason that we read scripture, is to know how Jesus would have, it's the old cliche, what would Jesus do? Right.
yeah, exactly. For sure. So if you liked this video and it was encouraging to you and you'd like to receive a daily encouragement, we have a wonderful opportunity for you. You can download the app by scanning the QR code, or you can subscribe to our email series through the link below. Our heart is to encourage you every single day.